A United Nations commission concluded numerous war crimes took place following Russia's invasion of Ukraine, with most having been committed by Russian forces. The commission announced the conclusion on Tuesday in a report submitted to the UN's Human Rights Council, outlining an array of international humanitarian law violations ranging from torture to rape and to summary executions. The impact of these violations on the civilian population in Ukraine is immense. Eric Moos, the Commission's chairman, said in a statement. The loss of lives in the thousands, the destruction of infrastructure is devastating. The Commission, which was established in March, days after the invasion began, also indicated that Ukrainian forces at times committed intentional international humanitarian law violations, including two incidents that the body said qualifies as war crimes. Members of the Commission traveled to Ukraine 5 times, visited 27 towns, interviewing 191 people, and inspecting sites like mass graves and places of detention. The Commission's members alluded to its findings to the Human Rights Council last month. The report, which focused on Ukraine's Kiev, Cherniv, Charkiv, and Sumy regions in the early weeks of the war, documents indiscriminate Russian attacks on populated Ukrainian areas and instances of Russian forces attacking civilians who were attempting to flee. These violations continue to have a devastating effect for victims and survivors, the report states. Significantly, victims emphasize the essential role of justice and accountability. In this regard, the Commission recommends enhanced coordination of international and national accountability efforts to improve effectiveness and prevent harm to victims and witnesses. The allegations of war crimes align with President Biden, who has called for Russian President Vladimir Putin to face trial. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has pitched creating an ad hoc international tribunal to punish Russia. Alongside our allies and partners, we will continue to impose costs on Russia for its aggression, hold Putin and Russia accountable for its atrocities and war crimes, and provide the support necessary for Ukrainian forces to defend their country and their freedom, Biden said in a statement earlier this month after Russia launched a barrage of missiles that landed in Kiev and other cities. Commission members also suggested both Russia and Ukraine, to differing degrees, failed to protect civilians by locating military assets near densely populated areas. That finding echoes the conclusions of Amnesty International in August, when it wrote that the Ukrainian military put civilians at risk by operating out of schools and hospitals. That is really stupid. The report caused an uproar among Ukrainian leaders who argued it unfairly blamed Ukraine for Russia's tactics. Amnesty stood by the report but issued a clarification that its findings did not justify Russian actions. The UN Commission will present its final findings, including recommendations for holding perpetrators accountable, in March to the body's Human Rights Council. The report submitted on Tuesday indicated that Commission members will focus their remaining efforts on alleged forced transfers of Ukrainians to Russia and referendums held in 4 Ukrainian regions last month about Russia annexing the territory. These referendums were condemned by U.S. and Western officials as a sham orchestrated by the Kremlin, and residents' supposed support prompted Russia to annex the region shortly afterward. The annexations marked an escalation in Putin's months-long invasion of Ukraine. So, this is all fairly awful, but the part that I find the most interesting is where Amnesty got some pushback for putting out a report that chastised the Ukrainian military for operating out of schools and hospitals, and how this was something that put these civilians at risk. And Ukraine responds with, well, we were attacked, and you can't blame it, even though no one is blaming them for Russia deciding to invade. But I think if your military chooses to stock itself in places where innocent civilians congregate, do things, etc., you are effectively putting a target on their back. And you can say it without being pro-Russia or supporting unlawful invasion. But it's interesting how these wars are used as a means, because we talked about this before. This is not about actually caring for Ukrainians or wanting to see the people that live there reunited in some way that is catering toward them. That's why we're hearing about some Ukrainians being forced to go to Russia. Apparently, you have Russian soldiers that are molesting women. It's like these are not the acts of a, and you know they're not the first military to do that. When you have so many people, they feel like they can do whatever they want. But at the same time, this conflict is an excuse to browbeat and show some type of dominance over another group of people. Um, and I just find this very interesting because you know this type of stuff, like they're talking about Putin, enacting martial law, but this type of stuff really doesn't get addressed that often, where they have just a group of people go to the country, interview individuals, get a firsthand recollection of what's going on, and put out a report. And that's why you won't see this covered by mainstream media, because they're all trying to pretend Ukraine hasn't, the Ukrainian military that is, um, and Zelensky haven't done anything wrong, because they want to, that's how they are. They take a side and then they just defend it in this almost completely non-objective way. But that report says we don't agree with Russia's invasion, but we also don't agree with putting civilians in danger, which is what the Ukrainian government did by by operating out of hospitals and schools. So it's nice to see an impartial body um, give a critique of both sides, and they're still fair. They're objective, and I appreciate that. It's one of the reasons I like the UN. I always find it interesting to have this group of people who just look at things from some third perspective and give a position, and you can draw your own conclusions. But I really like this type of story, as far as just it's interesting when they talk about it in the way that's not the bootlicking that you see from the mainstream news over here.